Hi, and welcome to the Conscious Marketer podcast. I'm also joined by Kylie Slavak. Hi, Kylie.
Hello.
And we're so pleased to have you on this podcast. And we're going to be introducing you to Heather Allison. She's going to be talking about the feminine approach to getting your work in the world and about some of the work she does, mainly with women. Heather is a sacred feminine teacher. She's a soul and shamanic guide for lovers, leaders, luminaries, and mystics. Her work has been described as revolutionary and life-changing, and by some, the far most important work they've ever done. I love this phrase, she's an activator of those who are here to be activators. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
I think we should just start where we talk about the feminine approach to marketing, because I think it's very different than more of a masculine approach. And I would just be kind of curious as how you would define a feminine approach to kind of getting your work in the world.
Oh, yeah, there's so much. I'd say first and foremost, there's an aspect of it that's really about allowing people to feel you, really just to feel something in what you're sharing. And for me, that's never going to be about poking on somebody's pain points or poking on their FOMO or poking on scarcity, any of that. That's not what we want them feeling. There's an aspect of wholeness involved in the feminine as well. She's very much about us being like already whole. So it's more about, are you feeling what you're sharing, and are you feeling the work that you're doing, and are you feeling what you're talking about, and are you speaking from somewhere that's lower than your head? That's a fairly big one. One of the things that I received, so most of my work is channeled after my spiritual awakening that happened about 6 years ago. And I received that there's a kind of a different look at the at the chakras, which is that the upper three are masculine and our lower three are feminine. And then the heart is like kind of the creator archetype, if you will, or the divine union of the two. And we want to be really talking from the lower, like really in the body, and you can tell even in somebody's voice, like I feel like mine, even just like paying attention to that, I feel like mine just dropped into my body a little bit more than it was up here a second ago and all excited. But we want to be feeling you in your marketing. That's probably the biggest one. The second one is obviously, like I said already, is like the aspect of wholeness. We don't want to be, I'm a huge believer in how much wound is created if we invite people into our work through wound. And it really doesn't set them up for the kind of success that they're coming to you for in the first place. Yeah, a lot more energetic, a lot more like, don't worry so much about if it makes sense. This has been a big one for me because I feel like before my spiritual awakening, I was very like, a friend of mine even used to say that I had a computer face because I'd just be like thinking so hard about things. And so it really came with a lot of letting go of needing to make sense in some sort of linear and traditional way, and letting yourself be felt, like I said, felt in a different, like a more energetic and a more somatic and a more visceral way by people. So they're probably the top three.
Tell us about this spiritual awakening we just got to hear about twice.
I know, I just threw it in there. Just a little aside. It happened about 6 years ago. I actually had, full-time jobs doing, I worked in a marketing agency for a little while. I worked at a branding agency for a little while. I worked, in corporate social responsibility for a little while. I kind of jumped around, couldn't really find the thing that really felt like it lit me up. And I also had a series of failed relationships. I had a marriage that didn't work. It was actually very, very toxic and damaging. A couple other relationships that didn't work. And by that point, I was like, what can I swear on here, by the way? Or should I keep it PG? Okay. I was like, what the fuck am I missing right now? Like, why do I keep getting this wrong? Why am I picking the wrong people? Or like, why is it just not working once I find somebody? And I found some work that was kind of a hint, a taste at this feminine and masculine energy work that I do. And all around the idea of relationships and the balance of energies in relationships. And I started kind of dabbling, and I was like, oh, and things just kind of started unlocking for me and feeling different and feeling better. And I started meeting, different kind of men. And so I was like, I just want all of this information. I want all of it. So I signed up for a coach training with this woman, not because I wanted to be a coach. I actually didn't even know that this was an industry at the time. I just wanted, give me everything. Like, speaking of over, like being in my head, of just give me all the information, please. I just want it all. But I got laid off from my job the day before it started. So and this is like 6 months later. And so it kind of just followed. I was like, okay, universe, and just kind of followed like, this is what we're doing. Okay. And, about 6 or 8 months into that, well, after, I started the coach training, I had this massive spiritual awakening, and like really out of the blue, where the simplest way I can describe it is that a guy on the other side of the veil started talking to me, and I was like, what is happening? Because I had never had any experience like that before. I didn't know that this was possible for me before. It took me a while for me to kind of believe it, but it was one of those things that just things kept happening that were so, like, dropped me to my knees. Can't make this up. Can't ignore this kind of thing. So I finally sat down and was like, listen, if something is talking to me right now, this is how. I was so terrified of it. So I was like, I will listen to this particular playlist, and you can talk to me and you can show me things, but this is my space. Like, I was so scared of it. But he started talking to me, and he started teaching me things. And just absolutely, like, my jaw on the floor, things that I couldn't make up. And since then it's obviously evolved and deepened and gotten bigger from there. But my work went from being kind of this like love coach, this relationship coach, to being very quickly about the energetics in all relationships. So, the right relationship with ourselves, with one another, with the planet, with the universe, with our soul, with the higher consciousness, whatever that is, it's with everything. And so that's the kind of the work that it has evolved into since then.
That's really, really fascinating, and thanks for sharing that story. That's such a great story. Like, it's kind of like our people. You're like our people, where we can talk about all this kind of stuff. It's amazing. So thanks for sharing. I'm kind of curious. So you're going through this shift, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, at what point where you're like, I need to help other people now? And then how did you kind of make that identity shift? Because a lot of people have kind of like a secret life they don't tell people about, And at what point did you feel comfortable enough to kind of go online and say, okay, this is that old version of me, like that kind of expired, and now there's this new version of me? And what enabled you to do that? Because for most people, that's kind of a difficult thing.
Yeah, and it was. I mean, my partner, he met me as one person, I feel like, and then I became this. Halfway through our relationship, I became this other human, and it can be hard for people. He was a champ about it. He was like, yeah, that makes sense about you. I was like, great. But I was terrified of anybody else seeing this about me. There was a long time where, I was kind of, and I actually offer this to my clients too, when they're scared about kind of coming out, if you will, in kind of spiritual ways, or with their work, or anything that they're talking, maybe their work is something to do with some taboos or what have you, is to do kind of what I did, which is I had a Facebook group where people were cultivated, right? Like they chose to be there. They wanted to be kind of in this work. And so it felt like a little bit of a safer pool to start like wading in a little bit and sharing a little bit more and more about the things that I was doing kind of behind the scenes, the more spiritual things. And then at some point I got really sick of it. You start feeling the edges of your own cage, where I was posting a little bit more freely in my Facebook group, but then I would kind of water it down for my more public posts, and like, I'll repurpose it and put it on my profile, but how do I make it more mainstream? And at some point I just kind of felt like I can't do that anymore. And I made a post on my personal page where I was like, listen, this is what's been going on over here for a while, and this is what you're going to see from me from now on. And I just outed myself, and I sobbed for probably 4 hours on my meditation mat, just like total ego death. But I still think to this day, it's probably the most likes and the most comments I've ever gotten on a post. And people even like, oh my God, this is so amazing, or oh my God, I wish I had that, or I wish, I've been experiencing this too, but I'm so terrified of talking about it. So it was a big Band-Aid rip for me, but it came with kind of giving myself a little bit of permission to be gentle with myself in the beginning, and just start by posting somewhere private.
I remember that post.
I know you do. I know you do. I were in,
I know.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
When you started moving more into, I don't know if you would call it coaching or mentoring or whatever it is that you do now, we were talking about some of the marketing you don't like, and I want to get to that in a minute, but what is some of the strategies that you did use or not strategies that you did use to begin to build your movement that you have?
I don't know that I ever really used a strategy, to be perfectly honest. Like I've never had a marketing plan. I've never had a business, and I don't mean to like poo-poo it because I know it works for some people. It just never worked for me. I feel like this is one of the things I feel really strongly about is like we kind of talked about a little bit before we started recording, which is like that our how and our why is so integral to the medicine that we're sharing in general, meaning like how we do our business, how we do our marketing, why we're doing it in the first place, even the intentions behind our posts or the intentions behind what we're launching or whatever, they, in my experience, really need to be a lot more cleanly aligned with the work that we're doing in the first place and like what we're a stand for and what we help people do and what we help people have. And when it's not, there's a dissonance that happens. And I really believe that we are all kind of collectively becoming more and more and more sensitive beings. Some through kind of force because it's gotten so hard and heavy that we're just more in touch with our feelings, but some just because there have more and more kind of spiritual awakenings happening, that there's a dissonance that happens when we're not, like I could be doing feminine energy over here and like teaching it to you and inviting you into this, but if I'm not marketing with the same principles and the same standards and the same values, then it's going to feel off for people. And they're not going to, especially the people that I want to be working with, they're going to feel something's funky. And so I feel like it's so important that how we do things is actually really deeply in alignment with what we're actually inviting people into in the first place. And so, like I said, speak to people like they're already whole. Yeah, there's pain still, there are pain points, but talk to them about what's possible and about how limitless this vast universe is and the mystery is and the feminine is. And, don't see them as limited beings, see them as their possibility. Don't, poke into their wounds or try to have them kind of, if I'm trying to help people out of their wounds and shift out of the wounded paradigm, the wounded masculine paradigm, then I'm not going to poke on it, to get them to buy here, if that makes sense. So nothing has been overly orchestrated or overly planned, sometimes much to my annoyance, because I sometimes want to be able to have a framework that I can just be like, oh, cool. Now I get to just not think about it or not be, not have to feel into everything every moment that I'm moving. But there's an aspect of that feels like it slips into a machine a little bit, where I'm taking me out of the process. I'm taking me out of my presence, my soul, my energy out of the process, just so that I can kind of be like, cool, I don't have to do anything now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, because when I first started, what's, I guess, become conscious marketer, we started to represent a lot of people in meditation and yoga and Tai Chi and then psychology as well. And I remember I had a group of naturopaths. I had I think 10 naturopaths. And you become a naturopath because you want to help people. And I remember being in a boardroom and sharing more about pain points and trying to connect with those. And every time I'd say something like that, this group would kind of cringe, because their whole life was about helping people heal, And I remember shifting my language in the moment to, having deep empathy and connection. And you talked about it earlier when you were saying feeling, and we work with a teacher named Thomas Hubel, and he has this really great phrase. It's, I feel you feeling me, which is, it kind of scrambles your energy system. But I think great marketing does that, where the person on the other side feels you feeling them, you've touched them so deeply with who they are, that they feel that you know them, and then they give you the trust after that. And that can't really be manufactured. A feeling can't be manufactured. It has to be true and clear. And that's where we started to shift our clients more to just understanding that, look, it's not that the marketing's over here and then the teaching's over here. It's just that they're one thing. And so eliminate the marketing and just start to give online and start to teach online. And then there's definitely better ways to do that than not better ways. But then that made everything easier, to see that distinction.
Yeah, I love that so much. I don't know that maybe I've heard that before, but I had forgotten it. It's not in my brain anymore. So I love that you brought that back. But you can even, as you said that, I feel you feeling me. There's something that happens in us when we go, wait, and we try to kind of, when we try to imagine what that is, like, let me try to picture what's actually happening in that. You can feel yourself like drop into your body instead of trying to figure it out in your brain. And that's exactly it. That's exactly it. There's also something really refreshing about marketing that's more in the feminine paradigm. I would classify the masculine kind of paradigm of marketing as kind of being, this is what you need to think about. Like, this is the logical reason why you need to buy this or have this or what have you, or poking on fear. Wounded feminine for me would be scarcity. So that would be like poking on like FOMO, or like, you're not going to be able to have this unless you buy this or whatever. It's so refreshing. I've seen so many women, or I've heard so many women talk about, like, just even asking them how they feel. Like, how does this feel? Or how, I'll have conversations with women considering joining one of my mystery schools, and I'll ask them, like, how would that feel for you? Or what would feel good for you here? And I've had women actually say to me, like, nobody's ever asked me that before. And it's like, man, it's just so, we're just all talking to people's heads constantly, or we're talking to their pain bodies constantly. And it's like, how would you like to feel? Or how does this feel to be here? And to have them kind of in the same way I feel you feeling me, it just drops them straight into their body, into something a lot more true to them, a lot more real, and a lot more resonant for them, that they can let themselves be guided by, which is kind of half the point of doing this work.
I like that. As you're speaking, and Richard as well, I was like, but I like pain points. And I do, because I feel like if I don't speak into the way that somebody is suffering, then I can't be deeply empathetic with where they're at. If I just kind of go, oh yeah, I use this example all the time. And there's a difference between speaking into someone's pain to be empathetic and poking at pain, like you're talking about poking at pain. And Richard, when you're talking about all these people that are teachers and Qigong healers and all these people that don't like it, don't like the idea of it. And I've worked with thousands of people over the years, none of them like it. But I use the example often of, my mom's sister was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer like 14 years ago. She's still miraculously alive. But so if I were to, this is what I feel like avoiding pain points is. If I flew home to be with her and I walked in the door and I said, hey mom, how's the weather? That's me going, I can't go there with you. Like, I am too afraid of your pain and the darkness that you're in right now to be able to sit there with you in it and hold that mirror up and say, hey, this is happening. I understand that it's hard. I want to be here for you. How can I be here for you? So that particular conversation, that way of having the conversation, is really how I approach pain points. And I personally feel like if we ignore that, if I ignore that as a copywriter, people don't respond as much. And when I have done marketing that is only aspirational, they don't respond as much because they're like, I can't see myself there. I don't see that. I don't get it. And so what I've really developed over the last 10 years is a way to speak to both, where it's like, can I meet you in your pain and talk to you about what's possible for you when you can move out of it and like you said it so beautifully, move into this limitless reality where all things are possible for you and you can live this amazing life. So I just wanted to share that, just because I'm very passionate about that topic, and I'm curious, either one of you really, because you both said it kind of in your own different ways, like I'm curious what either one of you thinks about that versus poking at pain or not speaking to pain at all.
Like I said, yeah, there's something really painful for us when we're really sensitive or intuitive or deeply feeling or deeply like just big fat hearts over here to the idea of manipulating people with their pain. And so there's a huge difference for me in using that pain. You can feel it. I feel like that's the whole key there, is you can feel it when somebody's using your pain to get something from you, versus like the idea of what you're talking about, which is like a friend putting their hand on another friend's hand and saying like, I see you, or I'm so sorry, or do you know, like, I get it, or God, that just fucking sucks, or like, do you know, like anything like that, just feeling somebody authentically. I think that we can tell. And so I think that it's just so subtle, right? Like, but when we're teaching people, this is my beef with actually a lot of spiritual principles and things in general, which is like there's a tendency to kind of bumper sticker them and like try to put them into kind of like this nice little template. If you just do this, then you're gonna have this or what have you. Or same thing with marketing, which is like speak to the pain points, but there's no finesse in it. There's no like understanding about how to actually hold space for that pain without causing more of it. And I just feel like it's so delicate. And so I think that's the bottom line for me. It's like working with the feminine and doing your marketing in the feminine is like, are you feeling it? Or are you just talking about their pain just to talk about their pain and like use it to try to get their attention? Do you know what I'm saying? Or use it to try to get a reaction out of them. And I feel like there's such a massive difference. And then the other thing I wanted to say too is like, even what you said, this limitless life and everything's better and everything. And even that's a lie. That's not true either. That's honestly half the stuff that I work with my clients is like, but everybody else has this. Everybody else is already at this place. I'm like, no, they're not. They just got a lot better at coming back to center. They just got a lot better at coming back into their own power. We don't get out of this life with a free pass. Like there's going to be pain. And even that I feel like is misleading and not authentic. It's like, how refreshing would it be if people were like, I'm going to help you find tools so that you can navigate and have and tap into your limitlessness, which means that as you meet pain in life, because you're going to, you have tools to come back to and you get better and better and better at meeting in it. And it feels less and less and less painful, but you're still going to have pain. Does that make sense? But I'm 1,000% with you on that. Yeah. Huge difference.
Yeah. I think I'd agree with both of you. It's, ignoring it isn't the answer and poking it isn't the answer. There's kind of like a middle ground of recognition. Cause, I have this great strategy where I just ignore something, and then I hope it gets better. It's, and so it works sometimes and other times it just doesn't work. I can tell you a lot of times it doesn't work, but I think that when you know that you can help somebody or you have medicine for somebody, and you can see somebody's kind of like just not being able to face the truth of where they're at. There's definitely a role of helping them to see that you can help them, and then there's a readiness. And so it's kind of figuring out is that person ready or not, and not forcing them one way or the other. I mean, I think you said it beautifully earlier, Heather, where you said there's a negative polarity of the feminine as well, too, where you're using, the scarcity button or whatever the button is, and I think sales is an interesting thing to talk about. It's like the taboo sales, because when we get on sales, like my perspective is I just want the best decision for the soul of the person I'm talking to. And if that person needs to go work with somebody else, then I'll give them the phone number, or I'll tell them, or if they're not ready, then I'm like, okay, like that's fine. But and then likewise on sales, I don't want like the other side of that, which is like, I'm afraid to ask for the sale either. If I know I can create the transformation. So I think for me, it's more like neutral. And then how can I hold space so that the person makes the best decision for their soul and their path. And if that's to work with me, then I want that person to work with me, and I'll let them know that, but not in a pushy way or a needy way, or not in a, I don't want to ask for the sale because I don't have any self-worth way either, because I know what I do works, so.
I love that. And I feel like that's kind of the key, right? Is that what we're doing as any kind of service provider truly, hopefully, is trying to empower people. And so you want that to give them that power of choice, and you don't want to be doing the opposite of what you're trying to help them do in the first place, which is like, a lot of people are trying to kind of like paint people into a corner so that they feel like they have to say yes, which is taking their power from them, or it's like encouraging them to hand over their power to something else, which is like, I want people to choose. So I will, in sales conversations with people, I'll be like, it might not be this work. It's completely okay. And if it is, I'm here or what have you, but I want people to have that. I'm trying to help them come into their own personal power. So I want them to have that even in choosing me, even in choosing this work, even in choosing one of my journeys, I want to start them out in the in the energetics that I'm actually trying to invite them into in the first place. It's actually one of my favorite things that happens in this work, is that sometimes women are like, I have no idea why I'm here. I just felt something and I don't know. I'm just being called to something and I don't even know what it is. And I'm like, yes, that's that. There's the mystery. She's calling you already. It's the most fun. But I want that whole process to feel like exactly what I want them to experience here, or exactly what I want them to take away from it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds like that's your ideal client. And you touched upon a couple of things about marketing that you don't like: manipulation, poking at things, using things. And so I'm curious, based on conversations we've had in the past, like an hour ago, what else you don't like? What are things in the marketing industry, the coaching industry, personal development that you see that you're like taking a sort of a strong stand around, that it's not okay?
Yeah, and I don't ever want to say like it's not okay, because like who am I to say, but I don't believe in marketing with money. Meaning like the tendency that there is, especially in the coaching industry these days, to say like, however many K months that I'm making, or that my clients are making, or however many K, how much you're making every year. And like that is actually the selling point, like the primary selling point. And I don't like it for a number of reasons. I have celebrated milestones in my marketing, or in my, things that I post or what have you, meaning like I just reached a milestone, but that's literally all I say. Like I'm celebrating a financial or a business milestone. But when it comes to laying out a measurement, this for me is just highly wounded masculine. And what it does is like kicks us all into this like, oh, then there's a measurement. What does that mean about me? What does that say about me? Whether it's inspiring, like I feel like it just creates wound within us, whether it's actually inspiring, or it feels like, oh, now I feel like shit because I'm not making that. Because every single entrepreneur is meant to have a different journey, and everybody's meant to make different amounts of money. And it doesn't like, we're not, my favorite thing to share with my clients is, because I think our brains go, well, but they did it, I should be able to do it too. Yes-ish, but we didn't all come here to just be a machine and become like these perfectly producing beings that like, I found the algorithm, or I found the right formula. Here, look at me produce. Like do you know what I'm saying? We didn't come here to be redundant. We didn't come here to just have all the same experience. Like what would the point be of us being here? And so like, if we can come out of this, there's so much of I call it the machine. There's so much of the machine that has kind of conditioned us into thinking that there's a right way, or there's the perfect way, or there's the right trajectory, or the right formula, or the right anything that is appropriate for all of us. And it's like literally if you walk out into that way of thinking, what do we have? We have a machine. If you walk any distance out into it, we just have a production line, and that's it. So if it literally can't be, I mean, this is like manifestation, this is law of attraction, like all of it. It can't be that you just get so perfect at it that you produce exactly the same thing as other people. Do you know what I'm saying? It can't be. So did that make sense? Because I get a little ranty about it. Okay, good. I have strong feels.
Yeah, no, I think that's, it's good to have strong feels. It's good to be passionate about what gets you upset. And it's kind of funny because it's a little bit divisive in itself, but it separates you into your own niche. It's taking a stand. It's what we call taking a stand. So that's part of your movement. And then you're helping women get their work into the world. And so it's important not only how you help them to grow in their craft, but also how that they're going to present that out too is equally important. I was kind of looking at your current marketing, and I really like the branding and everything. It's really, really beautiful and amazing. And a word caught me, and I'm kind of wondering what the frequency and vibration of this word is, because it's not a word you see very often. And you have some cool ones here, like ancient and deep, but the word is remembrance. And I'm wondering if you chose that word for a specific reason.
Even just you saying that, I was like, yes. Absolutely, I did. Because for me, it really is about remembrance. It is about, for me, remembrance is simply the fullest embodiment of our soul. If we imagine that our soul is the one who chose to be here, if he or she is the one who elected to be here or what have you, that he or she holds the map for what we're doing here, or at least the intention and the purpose and the mission for why we're here. And that we are we are her or him. I always say her because obviously so bear with me if I say her all the time. I'm not trying to leave out men. It's just that's who I work with. We are her, but we're a facet of her because we are in quite a bit of forgetting down here, quite a bit of conditioning, quite a bit of inputs from other people and just cultural conditioning and societal conditioning and just even like the collective, what I consider to be wounded masculine paradigm conditioning, where we just forget how to be fully, really, truly why we came here. And that for me is the remembrance. It's oh man, if we could just be the cleanest, purest, fullest vessel for who our soul is and why he or she came here, and be making decisions from that space and from that amount of love and from that amount of our power, from that amount of who we really are, like our essence self. I just feel it's like such a game changer. So I feel like it's not about me. I don't believe I'm here teaching anybody anything except for how to remember who they are, how to remember their soul, how to remember their actual power, how to remember their soul's mission here, how to remember what they came here for. It's really about kind of peeling away the layers of the mud, if you will, the layers of our forgetting so that we can remember. So yes, very much on purpose chose that word.
Love that. Well, I am curious if there's any stories or sort of learnings or anything like that you would love to leave our beautiful listeners with, because I'm sure that they have enjoyed this so far and you've been so generous and spontaneous and all the things.
I do want to say one more thing about the whole money thing. I don't think that it's like wrong if someone's marketing that way. I just am a much bigger believer in speaking to success rather than a measurement, a specific like number that we tend to kind of start measuring ourselves against. So I've seen other coaches talk about the success of a fully booked clientele or whatever it is, or able to support my family in blah, 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 or, that kind of thing, that level of success. I just wanted to speak to that because I don't think it's wrong. And I do know that we need to speak about successes. My invitation to everyone in whatever form of marketing or whatever form of doing business that they are trying on, to be running it through like those lower three chakras, running it through their body, running it through their emotion body, running it through their intuition, just to see. Those are kind of the three pillars I consider there to be the three primary pillars of the feminine, is like emotion, sensation, and intuition. It's like just run it through her just to see how it feels, and really start letting her kind of guide a little bit more than your brain. It's so hard. I mean, I still get caught up in like, well, but how is that going to work? Or does that make sense? Is this the right thing? And I have to keep coming back. So it's not like, again, it's not like we get to a place where we're suddenly like done and I have it all together and I never have wobbles or anything like that. It's just this devotion to returning to those deeper parts of ourselves and those more internal parts of ourselves that I wish we would let have more of a say in our journey, especially in business where, man, it's so quick and so easy to just push her out of the room.
Well, thank you so much, Heather, for being on the podcast. We really enjoyed having you here, and thanks for those. I love those three pillars at the end there too. Now, if people want to work with you or get to know you a bit more, I know your website is heather-allison.com. Is that right? Mm-hmm. And you also have your main offering right now is the Golden Goddess Mystery School. Is that always open, or do you open like once a year? How does that work?
Yeah, no, Golden Goddess is the annual mystery school, and it's open for enrollment once a year. So I'm enrolling for 2023 right now. We have about 8 seats still open. That said, the enrollment phase is quite long. It's this open, rolling, relaxed, beautiful journey. I also have 2 other offerings, 2 other kind of mystery schools that are a bit smaller. There's the mini mystery school called the Spiral, which does, at least once we get to about November or December, it's going to be open for enrollment kind of all the time. I think that could change, so bear with me if it does. But as of right now, I think that's going to be the plan. And it's a much lighter journey. It's not quite as deep. It's a beautiful taste of and a beautiful journey through the mysteries. Also a year long, but you can come in kind of anytime. And then there's really very much the taste, which is the inner sanctuary, which is basically the monthly Divine Feminine Temple, which is really kind of like if you just are curious about this work and you just kind of want to come in, it's the lowest investment, and you can kind of come and go as you please, and you can really just kind of get a taste for what this work is like. And then I have courses and things like that too. Very prolific over here, but I won't go into all of that. So I really have 3 layers of mystery school to explore.
All right, that's amazing. Go check her out and go to Heather Allison, heather-allison.com, and she's on Facebook and all the other social channels. Thanks for all the listeners who are with us. And if you want to get all the links and also the show notes for this podcast, you can go to consciousmarketer.com/podcast. We have all our podcasts there. Or if you're listening on iTunes, give us a like. We greatly appreciate you being here, Heather. Thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you so much.
And thanks all the listeners for being here too. See you next time. Bye for now.